All right. I am Laura Russell, a licensed clinical social worker, and I work with AdventHealth. I kind of do a two-part role. So I work with Dr. Jareth in our clinic seeing CMT patients, as well as work on supporting our community patients who live with CMT. And I'm so happy to be here. I am going to be talking about the role of caring for caregivers. And I know there's an infinite amount of resources out there for caring for caregivers, but today is really about caring for you, the person who is actually providing that care and support for the people we love the most. All right, so the important part is talking about the impact of providing care. I'm going to break it down into four separate sections, and this is really going to express the impact of what it means to provide care. And then after we talk about this section, we'll go into some really good survival tips on becoming the best caregiver you can and also focusing on caring for yourself. So the big important piece right now is a lot of people ask, what is the average age of a caregiver in the US? Well, it is actually quite young. So the average age is 49 years old, which is very much the working age, right? So a lot of people are doing dual roles, caring for their loved one, as well as maintaining an entire life outside of that role. And 48% of caregivers are between 18 and 49 years old. So quite young, right? So a lot of people are dedicating a lot of time to this role. And that brings me into how much time are caregivers giving to this role? Well, family caregivers spend an average of 24 hours per week providing care. And what that translates to is truly, it is a part-time job for many of you that are providing this care. And it can be all different types of care. So nearly 1 in 4 caregivers spends almost 41 hours a week or more providing care. So it could be a complete full-time or a non-stop job, right? So caregiving doesn't just stop when the sun goes down and it's time for bed. Nope, it's 24-hour role, right? Your mind is always running. And what kind of tasks do caregivers perform? Well, 46% perform medical nursing tasks. So a lot of caregivers are not medically trained, but they quickly learn how to take that role on as being a nurse or even a doctor, managing medications, managing doctor's appointments, surgical appointments, managing post-surgery. There's so many different tasks that goes into that role. And 96% of caregivers also help with activities of daily living. So food prep, housekeeping, laundry, transporting to different appointments, to school. So many different factors go into that. And now, if you never thought you were getting recognized for that role as a caregiver, let me dispel that myth right now. The economic value of being a caregiver, the value of services provided by informal caregivers has steadily increased over the last decade, and with an estimated economic value of $470 billion. That is how much our informal caregivers, so our wives, siblings, parents, children, all of those roles would equal that much money if you were to hire or need state funding. So this is a huge impact financially that you are providing a loved one of that care. All right, and now we can't talk about caregivers without mentioning caregiver stress and caregiver burnout. These are huge factors, and I'm sure you've heard those terms often, but really caregiver stress is the emotional and physical toll caregiving takes. And there will definitely be personal stress and sacrifice that is made. But how much is too much stress? At what point do we worry about things are getting out of hand? So it definitely takes a lot of personal sacrifice to really take on that role as a caregiver. And what happens if the stress is becoming too much? Well, we worry about caregiver burnout, which is the state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. And prolonged state of this exhaustion can result in an attitude change, which is what we really want to be careful of. We can be the most positive and caring caregiver, but when our stress becomes too much that we start getting burnt out, our attitude can change to negative and uncaring, even though it's not in our nature. So I want to highlight some of those points and be mindful of these symptoms to see if this is something that you've been dealing with. Sometimes we have the denial of the diagnosis. If we have CMT ourselves and then our children have CMT, that is a big impact. And it's easy to kind of just be like, oh, and start panicking over what the future looks like for what you've been going through, for your loved one, your sister. All of those things are something to be mindful of. Being mindful if you're starting to isolate from your friends and family, just staying with you and the person you care for, anxiety about the future needs that I talked about, depression, where you can't really find the joy in a lot of things anymore that you once loved, or just complete exhaustion. Have you ever been so tired you could think, if I just close my eyes right now, I could fall asleep standing? But then when it's time to actually go to sleep, you're wide awake and your mind is just running and running. That's what we fear is burnout, where you can't shut off and kind of focus on yourself. So you're going to say, all right, great. Now I'm trying to avoid burnout and stress. What do we do about it? Well, number one is the easiest possible thing, and that's maintaining you. We really want to make sure that you learn to express your feelings. You're important, and you have to make yourself a priority. Find somebody to talk about your situation and your feelings. Make sure you are taking time to own and process your own health. You have to make time every day to relax daily. Talk with others, maybe even journal, write down your thoughts, have a well balanced diet, set a time where you can go walk in the neighborhood or just sit on your back porch and just take time for yourself. And most important, I hear all the time where caregivers say, I am so busy and wrapped up with appointments for my loved one that I just put mine on the back burner. Well, you can't do that. You have to make yourself and your health a priority, because you are no good to anybody if you aren't cared for yourself. So that's really big. So as a caregiver, we want you to maintain balance in your life. Do not give up all those activities that you once found. You just have to write out the schedule on a calendar and really fit time in for you. So find a community such as a social club, a church organization, or even a support group. And we'll talk about support groups here in a little bit. And most importantly, learn to treat yourself. Get that pedicure you've been wanting. Go get a massage. Take your loved one out of the home. Go do something you guys once enjoyed before things became a little more complicated. It might take a little bit more planning, but it's important to find that relationship. And then give yourself credit, not guilt. I want you to say that all the time. Give yourself the credit for the amazing work you are doing as a caregiver and feel proud of the role that you have. And then now on the second side of the screen, we're going to talk about my little favorite saying, no shame, just create support, right? This is not all on you. There are people willing and wanting to help. So hold a family conference, include everyone in a neutral place, and express your feelings and voice what is needed. A lot of people in passing will say, I hear you got this diagnosis. Please call me if you ever need anything. Okay, so then I'm going to challenge you to take on that. Call them, assign tasks. A lot of people are willing and waiting in the kind of corner because they don't know how to approach you. You're going to start assigning and asking for that help, and kind of identify with each family member who's going to take on what responsibility and what that looks like to help. It could be as simple as your cousin is going to bring down the trash to the end of the street on Friday for trash day. Just little things to help ease your load. And then we're going to establish a network, include your neighbors, healthcare professionals, friends in the community. And then don't be afraid to assign that help. With your own house responsibilities, maybe you're able to get a cleaning service once a month that can help, or a laundry service to kind of give you some of that time back. And I know a lot of this requires financial security and be able to get those resources. But if you do a deep dive, there's lots of grants for respite care and support. And then, of course, connect with your friends. Keep those relationships strong and going. We want to make sure we decrease the isolation of being a primary caregiver. All right, and then now we're going to talk about some skill check. I like to kind of point out it's important that when we're looking at ourselves as a whole person, and recognizing that we have our own identity. It's important that we want to acknowledge empathy. Regardless of the reasons your loved one needs care, it's important to provide care in ways that are respectful of their dignity. I know caring for somebody who has maybe some mobility issues and you're watching them kind of struggle with putting their AFOs on and you guys are in a hurry. And it's kind of one of those things where, if I could just help you, we could get done a lot faster. But then we're slowly taking someone's independence away. So we want to be careful and have that empathy and recognize we just need a little bit of patience as well and let them still have that big independence that they want. And then, of course, effective communication. We're never done learning about the importance of communicating comfortably and with somebody. And don't ever assume you know what someone wants or needs. Definitely ask. Always ask, is it okay if I do this? Or how would you like me to do this task for you? Or how does that look? And then talk openly about your fears, worries, and needs so you can make sure you have a really good, frank, and meaningful dialogue. And then, of course, patience and build confidence. Bear in mind that many people feel they can still be as independent as they always were pre symptoms, and they don't feel they need your help. And that's great. It is okay to stand back, be available, and wait until you're asked to get help or be of help. That is perfectly fine too. Sometimes it's okay to let people struggle and just stand by and be welcoming. I know it's easy sometimes to just jump in and kind of do tasks for everybody, but it's good to let others be challenged. And then your body language, check and pay attention to those nonverbal cues that you might give off, or your body movements, facial expressions. Definitely know body posture speaks way louder than words sometimes. So it's important to check that. And then finally, role check. And what I mean by that is check your identity. You are still a whole person with feelings, thoughts, needs, and it is important that we acknowledge those needs and continue to water yourself like you're a flower, give yourself nutrition, let yourself have the sun. And when you are with your loved one, don't just be care partner and spouse or care partner and your daughter. Continue those relationships beyond that caregiver role and really make sure you check those out. All right. And then finally, for some resources, we have support groups. Do not underestimate the importance and power of a support group. You want to be able to find a safe, mutual space where you can express the complications of life with CMT, caring for someone with CMT, and how that impacts your world, right? And there are support groups out there. There's so many on Facebook, there's virtual, there's in person. I know the pandemic has put a big damper on in person, but there are virtual. I currently facilitate a virtual support group, and we meet on the first Tuesday of every month, and you are happy to join. And we do guest speakers every once in a while, and it's important we connect to people on similar journeys. Everybody has their unique story, but it's nice to hear what tips have been working for others. And then there's individual counseling. So don't carry the load alone. You can always look for a therapist for Psychology Today. And then connect with a therapist one-on-one to make sure you have that support. And then self-care. Continue to make sure that you are number one. All right. Thank you so much. I am so happy we were able to share in this time. If you ever need any additional support or needs, you can certainly reach out to me. I am so happy to have connected with everyone. We will see you virtually in our support group as well as at our virtual booth. We are happy to connect that way as well.